and welcome to the Kindness Matters podcast. I'm your host, Mike Rathbun. As you might have guessed, this podcast is dedicated to kindness. Kindness is a superpower that each and every one of us possesses, a force that is strong enough to drastically impact your life and the lives of those around you for the better. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about kindness, and let's talk about how each and every one of us can use kindness to change the world. Welcome to the very first episode of the Kindness Matters podcast. I am your host, Mike Rathbun. I started this podcast because I wanted to shine a light on kindness. You see, I believe that kindness has the power to change the world. I believe that kindness can transform our communities, from individuals to towns and cities, into better places to live. My hope with this show is to inspire and motivate us by sharing stories of kindness, big and small. When I started podcasting almost 3 years ago, I found it better to have guests tell their own stories. I mean, hearing a story is one thing, but I've always believed that it was more impactful, more compelling, to hear a story from the individual themselves. Recently, I reached out to the kindness subreddit and asked people to share their stories, their experiences with kindness. I got so many great responses, but one, in particular, really stuck out to me, and I knew right then and there that I absolutely needed to tell his story. So I reached out to this guy and asked if he would be willing to come on my show and tell his story. He was grateful for the opportunity, but said he was too busy taking care of his wife. Now, I don't like to be pushy with people. I am a horrible salesman. If someone says no, I tend to leave it there. But there was something about his story that made me push a little harder. I asked if he would be willing to let me tell his story. Mind you, we've never met. I am some faceless rando from the internet. He doesn't know me from Adam. But despite all that, he said yes. This is the story of Jenny and James Steele from Illinois, and how they took a life-altering event and made it into nearly 1,000 acts of kindness. When James was younger, he enjoyed photography, and he was good at it. Really good. Everyone in his town northwest of Chicago loved his work. As you might imagine, James has a bit of an artistic streak. So in addition to photography, he started scrapbooking. At some point, the photography slowed down and the scrapbooking began to take the forefront for James. Taking photos of his family and vacations that they had taken and making them look good in scrapbooks brought him joy. And then, James said, he had a calling. He said he felt called to be a child mentor. He made the effort to reach out and get into a program that would allow him to mentor young people. According to James, though, his own troubled youth made it impossible for him to get into a program to help children. He put that calling on the back burner for a few years and then tried again, but he was rejected all over. Shortly after that second failed attempt to help children, James and Jenny Steele got some devastating news. In 2019, Jenny had been having some abdominal issues, and so she went to the doctor. After many tests, the diagnosis came back. Stage 4 colon cancer. Not only that, but the cancer had spread to her lymph nodes and her liver. One can only imagine the range of emotions that follows a diagnosis like that. Sadly, many of my listeners know those feelings all too well. Sorrow, despair, and anger for sure. You find yourself asking, why me? There's a tendency to feel alone. But then, according to James, something happened. Kindness happened. Friends and family members stepped in and supported James and Jenny in ways big and small. They were overwhelmed by the love and support they were receiving. James talked about how, after the diagnosis, Jenny began receiving greeting cards in the mail. Cards urging Jenny to be strong, cards of encouragement. Naturally, she loved every single one of them, and she told James that she wanted to keep all of the stamps. According to James, his creativity, his unfulfilled need to help kids, and his overwhelming desire to give something back for all the kindness they had received, combined with his wife's desire to keep all the stamps she had received, it all came crashing together. And that's when he had the idea to create Stamps for Hope. What is Stamps for Hope? At its most basic level, it is a website that anyone can go to and send a greeting card to someone else in the United States for free. The range of cards is amazing. James will send out a card for every occasion you could imagine. Some of the categories are Mother's Day, Father's Day, Nurse's Day, the 4th of July, Grandparents' Day, and of course the usual events like birthdays, wedding anniversaries, sympathy, get well, new baby, graduation, thank you, thinking of you, and their most popular card, encouragement. They even have a feature that allows you to send a card anonymously. To date, they have sent out over 792 cards. Relying on his artistic nature, James personally decorates every card and sends them out in the mail for free. He pays for everything himself, and with a few generous donations here and there. James said he believes everything happens for a reason. He said if it wasn't for all the love and support Jenny and he got, he knows they would both be in a worse place, physically and emotionally. As James and I were talking, I mentioned how I had given my wife a Cricut machine for Christmas, and she really enjoyed making cards on it. I regularly try to get her to make cards to sell at craft fairs and whatnot, but she says that having to make cards would take the joy out of making them, so she simply makes cards for family and friends. That's what brings her joy. James related this story in response. At his old job, there was a new hire that stayed for several weeks. James was telling this person about his platform, as he calls it, and then, out of the blue, a week's worth of Amazon packages came to his home addressed to Stamps for Hope. For the life of him, James could not make out the name of the sender. It was a mystery. The packages included a brand new Cricut machine, a shirt heat press, and many, many blank cards and stickers. 1 week before the new hire left, James found out it was them that sent the packages. He says to this day, he believes 100% that person is an angel in disguise. And Jenny? She continues to fight nearly 4 years later. She is determined to kick cancer's ass. In early April, she went to Chicago to investigate a clinical trial, but her oncologist determined that it wasn't a good fit for her diagnosis. She has started a new type of chemo pill and fights with every ounce of her being every single day. I believe we all want to be kind. Sometimes, though, we tend to overthink what being kind looks like, and it seems overwhelming to try. Sometimes, though, we hear a story, and that provides inspiration or motivation. I hope this story of Jenny and James Steele provides you with that. And that will do it for the very first episode of the Kindness Matters podcast. I hope you've enjoyed today's show. I hope you can take something from it, some inspiration or motivation to go out and be kind today or tomorrow or the next day. You'll be able to find all of James and Jenny's links in the show notes. There will be links to Stamps for Hope and also a link to Jenny's page where you can get updates on her progress and make a donation if you feel moved to do so. You'll also be able to find links to their different social media pages as well. So we are off until next time. I had this closing as on my other podcast, the Pork Pond Gazette podcast, but I think it's still appropriate for this one, so I'll keep using it. Be that person that roots for others, who tells a stranger they look amazing, and encourages others to believe in themselves and their dreams. You've been listening to the Kindness Matters podcast, and I am your host, Mike Rathbun. Thank you for the privilege of your time.